Another one for you midnights, Unmasking Infamy, the psychology and societal impact of serial killers. Let us know where you are listening from and don't forget to subscribe. The chilling phenomenon of serial murder has, throughout history, captivated and horrified societies in equal measure. While statistically rare, the macabre notoriety of certain individuals who repeatedly take human lives leaves an indelible mark on the collective consciousness. The most famous serial killers, far from being mere criminals, become figures of morbid fascination, their cases not only illuminating the darkest corners of human psychology but also profoundly impacting criminal justice, popular culture, and societal perceptions of fear and safety. To truly grasp this dark subject, it's crucial to understand what defines a serial killer. Law enforcement agencies generally define a serial killer by the presence of 3 or more victims, with killings occurring at separate events and characterized by cooling-off periods between murders. This distinguishes them from mass murderers, multiple victims in a single event, and spree killers, multiple victims at different locations without a significant break. Historically, while the term serial killer was only coined in recent decades, the phenomenon itself dates back centuries. Accounts of individuals described in historical records as engaging in repeated, heinous acts, perhaps representing early interpretations of what we now understand as serial predators, can be found. The rise of large, anonymous urban centers, particularly from the 19th century onwards, created ideal hunting grounds. The anonymity of growing metropolises meant increased numbers of transient populations, a breakdown of traditional community surveillance where everyone knew their neighbors, and a wider pool of potential victims who were strangers to their attackers. This urban sprawl allowed individuals to prey on others and evade detection more easily than in smaller, more close-knit communities where strangers would be quickly noticed. The fame of a serial killer often stems from a combination of highly specific and interrelated factors that transform them from mere offenders into figures of public, albeit morbid, renown. These elements include sheer brutality and unique modus operandi. The more gruesome, depraved, or unusual the nature of their crimes, the more they capture public attention. This could involve extreme mutilation, ritualistic elements, or acts that shock the human conscience, making them inherently newsworthy. Elusiveness and prolonged period of activity. Killers who evade capture for extended periods, sometimes years or even decades, become legendary. This sustained terror, coupled with the inability of law enforcement to apprehend them, amplifies their mystique and feeds public anxiety. The longer they operate undetected, the more the public questions the efficacy of protective systems. Manipulation of media and public interaction. Some serial killers actively cultivate their own notoriety. This can involve sending taunting letters to the police or media, leaving cryptic clues, or engaging in public displays during trials. This direct interaction transforms them from faceless criminals into seemingly intelligent, manipulative antagonists in a macabre game. The media, in turn, often sensationalizes these communications, inadvertently contributing to their celebrity monster status. High victim count or geographic spread. While not always the primary driver of fame, a significant number of victims or killings spread across multiple jurisdictions often contributes to broader recognition. The sheer scale of their crimes emphasizes their danger and reach. Perceived charisma or normalcy. Paradoxically, killers who appear intelligent, charming, or outwardly normal often achieve greater infamy. This challenges societal expectations of what a monster looks like, making their evil seem more insidious and terrifyingly close. This superficial charm can also be exploited to gain public sympathy or to manipulate the justice system. Monster next door syndrome. When a killer is discovered to have lived a seemingly ordinary life, holding a job, having a family, or being involved in the community, it shatters the illusion of safety and fuels a primal fear that evil can reside anywhere. This subversion of trust resonates deeply with the public. The why factor. Incomprehensibility. The human mind struggles to comprehend such extreme acts of violence, especially when there appears to be no logical motive. This inherent incomprehensibility drives a powerful, sometimes subconscious, desire to understand why, leading people to endlessly consume content about these individuals in a bid to make sense of the senseless. Media saturation and fictionalization. Modern mass media, from newspapers to television, true crime documentaries, podcasts, and fictional adaptations, plays a crucial role in amplifying and immortalizing serial killers. The continuous retelling and dramatization of their stories embed them deeply into popular culture, often blurring the lines between reality and sensationalized fiction, and turning them into consumable characters that evoke a guilty pleasure in audiences. This media attention, while informing, also risks inadvertently glorifying perpetrators and overshadowing victims. Societal reflection and existential fear. Serial killers become cultural touchstones because they tap into fundamental human fears about vulnerability, survival, and the dark potential within humanity. They represent a primal threat, making people question their own safety and the fragility of social order. This existential reflection contributes to their lasting presence in the collective psyche. Figures like the infamous Whitechapel murderer, operating in the fog-shrouded alleys of Victorian London in the late 1880s, achieved legendary status due to the gruesome mutilation and disembowelment of his victims, predominantly women from the area. The detailed accounts of the victims' injuries, such as extensive abdominal evisceration, removal of organs, and severe facial mutilations in several cases, indicated a shocking level of brutality and, in some instances, a chilling precision. His enduring anonymity, despite intense police investigations, which primarily relied on witness interviews, rudimentary crime scene observations, and widespread but often uncoordinated public inquiries characteristic of the era, forever etched him into the annals of unsolved mysteries. The absence of modern forensic tools like fingerprinting or DNA analysis meant investigators were severely limited, often relying on witness accounts that were inconsistent or unreliable. His ability to vanish into the crowded, labyrinthine city after each brutal act, coupled with tantalizing letters purportedly from the killer himself, though their authenticity remains debated, not only terrorized Whitechapel but also sparked a global media frenzy, setting a chilling precedent for how the press would sensationalize and cover such atrocities. The unsolved nature of his crimes continues to fuel countless theories, books, and films, solidifying his place as perhaps the most famous, and certainly the most enigmatic, serial killer in history. This case effectively birthed the modern concept of the serial killer in the public imagination, demonstrating how an unknown assailant could hold an entire city in a grip of fear. In the 20th century, the rise of mass media, particularly television and the 24-hour news cycle, amplified the infamy of serial killers, transforming them into household names that evoked a visceral sense of dread. The period from the 1970s to the 1990s in one major Western nation is often referred to as a significant era for serial murder, marked by a perceived surge in cases. Statistical analyses from this period indicate a peak in active serial offenders, with estimates often placing the number in the hundreds annually during a particular decade. This surge directly led to increased attention from law enforcement and the public. A prominent figure from the 1970s, known for his deceptive charm, became a chilling symbol of the monster next door. His seemingly normal demeanor, coupled with high intelligence, allowed him to abduct, assault, and murder numerous young women across several states. His modus operandi often involved feigning injury or impersonating an authority figure to gain the trust and empathy of his predominantly young, attractive female victims. He would then overpower them and transport them to remote locations for further assaults and murder. This individual frequently revisited the corpses, engaging in further acts until decomposition made it impossible. His ability to manipulate those around him, including legal professionals, jurors, and the media, his trials were among the first to be nationally televised, underscored the profound danger of appearances. His cases exposed the public to the calculated brutality lurking beneath a handsome facade, challenging societal assumptions about what a killer looked like and raising uncomfortable questions about human evil. His case, in particular, spurred a greater focus on victimology and the psychological profiling of offenders, as authorities grappled with the insidious nature of a killer who defied conventional stereotypes. Psychological assessments of this type of perpetrator often highlight what some refer to as successful psychopathy, where individuals exhibit traits allowing them to integrate into society and evade detection for extended periods due to superficial charm and an ability to navigate social structures. This success is often characterized by traits like high conscientiousness, being skilled and organized, alongside antagonism, being manipulative and callous, and low neuroticism, displaying fearlessness. Similarly, a killer whose heinous crimes came to light in the early 1990s, shocked the world with the horrifying details of his cannibalism, necrophilia, and dismemberment of numerous young men and boys in a Midwestern city. His modus operandi involved luring mostly marginalized men from gay bars, malls, or bus stops to his apartment with promises of money or sex. Once there, he would drug them, typically with sedatives, and then strangle them to death. What followed were acts of extreme depravity, including sex acts with the corpses, dismemberment, and the preservation of body parts as souvenirs. He also attempted crude lobotomies on some victims while they were still alive, hoping to create controlled zombies. The failure of authorities to intervene sooner, despite repeated complaints from neighbors, including a particularly alarming incident where a victim briefly escaped his apartment only to be returned by police to the killer, who falsely claimed he was his adult boyfriend, highlighted systemic issues within law enforcement and community vigilance regarding marginalized populations. His seemingly mundane existence as a factory worker contrasted starkly with the unspeakable acts committed within his apartment, pushing the boundaries of human depravity and sparking intense public debate about mental illness, the efficacy of the justice system, and the nature of evil itself. Another notorious figure from the 1970s, known for his dual life as a community figure and serial killer, presented a disturbing dichotomy. A seemingly respected local businessman, community leader, and performer at children's parties, he engaged in the rape, torture, and murder of numerous young men and boys, burying most of their bodies in the crawlspace beneath his suburban home. His modus operandi involved luring his victims, often young males from vulnerable backgrounds or those he met through his business, to his home under false pretenses, such as offering work or a place to stay. He would then often trick them into putting on handcuffs, claiming it was part of a magic trick, before assaulting and ultimately strangling or asphyxiating them. His ability to maintain a veneer of normalcy while committing such monstrous acts highlighted the terrifying potential for hidden depravity within seemingly ordinary communities, shattering the illusion of safety in the suburbs. This case also brought attention to the vulnerabilities of young, transient males, who were frequently targets of serial predators. Beyond these well-known figures, other serial killers achieved notoriety for their distinct patterns or their lasting impact. An unidentified perpetrator active in a Californian region in the late 1960s and early 1970s, gained infamy not just for his confirmed murders but for his unique method of communication. He sent cryptic letters and ciphers to local newspapers, taunting police and sparking widespread public fear. These ciphers, some of which remained unsolved for decades, became a central part of his mystique. He often used a distinctive symbol and engaged in direct correspondence, demonstrating a deliberate effort to control the narrative and challenge authorities. Like the Whitechapel murderer, his identity remains unknown, ensuring his enduring presence in popular culture and true crime narratives. His ability to control the narrative through his communications demonstrated a new level of psychological warfare waged against the public and law enforcement, challenging their investigative capabilities. Then there's a notable figure from the late 19th century, sometimes cited as an early modern serial killer, who built a meticulously designed structure in a major American city during a famous exposition. This multi-story building was specifically constructed with hidden passages, trapdoors, soundproofed rooms, gas jets to asphyxiate victims, and a basement equipped with acid vats, quicklime pits, and a dissection table, facilitating the murder and disposal of numerous victims, primarily women lured by employment or lodging opportunities for the exposition. He would also engage in selling the remains of his victims for profit. This killer's calculated and architectural approach to murder highlighted a terrifying new dimension of premeditated, systemic violence driven by financial gain and a complete disregard for human life. Another figure, an infamous perpetrator who terrorized a major eastern U.S. city from the mid to late 1970s, was responsible for killing several people and wounding many others with a large-caliber handgun. His claims of being commanded by a bizarre, external force added a strange, almost supernatural element to his reign of terror, further fueling public panic. The city was gripped by fear, with women altering their hairstyles to avoid being targets. The intense media scrutiny and public hysteria surrounding his case demonstrated the profound psychological toll a serial killer can exact on an entire metropolitan area. Perhaps one of the most prolific documented serial killers in recent history, an individual operating across multiple U.S. states from the 1970s to the 2000s, was confirmed to have killed scores of women, though he claimed a higher number. His modus operandi involved strangling his victims, typically marginalized women of color who were drug users or sex workers. Because there were often no stab or gunshot wounds, their deaths were frequently misclassified as drug overdoses, accidents, or natural causes, allowing him to evade detection for decades as he traveled across the country. His victims' transient lifestyles and lack of social safety nets made their cases less likely to be immediately prioritized, highlighting the systemic vulnerabilities some populations face. Globally, figures like a notorious killer from the Soviet Union in the late 20th century who was responsible for dozens of murders of women and children, employed a modus operandi involving luring victims, often runaways or sex workers, to secluded areas near public transport hubs, then brutally stabbing and mutilating them, often engaging in acts of depraved violence beyond the killing itself. His sexual gratification was derived from the act of violence itself, rather than conventional intercourse. Or a predator known for targeting vulnerable individuals in a Pacific Northwest city for decades, who confessed to scores of murders, primarily of sex workers. His modus operandi involved picking up victims along major roadways, strangling them, and then dumping their bodies in remote, often concealed, locations, frequently revisiting the sites for further degradation. His methodical approach and efforts to mislead police, sometimes by leaving misleading evidence, allowed him to elude capture for nearly 2 decades. Beyond their individual crimes, the most famous serial killers often share chilling psychological traits, meticulously dissected by criminal profilers and forensic psychologists. A pervasive lack of empathy and remorse, a grandiose sense of self-worth, and a profound, often sexualized, need for power and control are common threads. Many exhibit symptoms of antisocial personality disorder, ASPD, or psychopathy. Research indicates a high correlation between these severe personality disorders and serial offending, with a significant majority of documented serial killers meeting the criteria for psychopathy. These individuals are characterized by a disregard for the rights of others, a failure to conform to social norms, deceitfulness, impulsivity, irritability, aggressiveness, and irresponsibility. As noted by some forensic psychologists, in cases of serial sexual murder, killing alone is not psychosexually sufficient. So they have to go above and beyond actually killing the person to get complete sexual gratification. This highlights the deeply ingrained, often escalating, nature of their dark fantasies. Their disturbing capacity for manipulation, often coupled with high intellectual functioning or an uncanny ability to compartmentalize their lives, like an individual who maintained a seemingly normal family life as a respected community member while committing heinous acts of binding, torture, and killing, allows them to deceive their victims, law enforcement, and even their own families. While not all serial killers come from troubled backgrounds, severe childhood trauma, particularly abuse, physical, emotional, sexual, and neglect, are frequently cited as significant contributing factors to their developmental pathology. Studies have consistently shown that a substantial percentage of serial killers report experiencing various forms of abuse, including psychological torture, which encompasses extreme emotional neglect, constant verbal abuse, severe humiliation, or systematic isolation, during their formative years. Early behavioral problems, such as cruelty to animals, persistent bedwetting beyond an appropriate age, and fire starting, a controversial but often cited triad of indicators, are sometimes noted as potential, though not definitive, signs of developing violent tendencies. Their crimes are often meticulously planned, driven by twisted fantasies that escalate over time, leading to distinct cooling-off periods between murders as their psychological urges rebuild, sometimes over months or even years. Motivations for serial killing are diverse, categorized by law enforcement profilers into visionary, driven by hallucinations, mission-oriented, believing they are ridding society of certain groups, hedonistic, killing for pleasure, either sexual or thrill-based, and power/control, deriving satisfaction from dominating victims. Victim selection often reflects these motivations, based on vulnerability, availability, and the killer's specific psychological needs and fantasies. As some pioneers in criminal profiling have stated, behavior reflects personality. The best indicator of future violence is past violence. They further emphasize the psychological core: manipulation, domination, control. These are the 3 watchwords of violent serial offenders. The impact of these notorious figures extends far beyond the immediate victims and their grieving families, touching upon various interdisciplinary angles. From a neuroscience perspective, emerging research provides insights into the biological underpinnings of psychopathy. Studies have revealed consistent abnormalities in the brains of individuals with psychopathy, including reduced activity or structural differences in brain regions responsible for processing emotions like fear and those involved in decision-making, impulse control, and social behavior. Leading neuroscientists specializing in psychopathy highlight how these brain differences can explain profound emotional deficits and poor behavioral regulation, suggesting that psychopaths process emotional material in a very different way than non-psychopaths do. It's almost like they have a different operating system in their brains. This neurobiological basis also sheds light on the often cited difficulty in treating these offenders, as traditional talking therapies may be ineffective when fundamental emotional processing is impaired. From a political science and policy angle, periods of heightened serial murder activity in certain nations were not just times of increased criminal acts but crucibles for significant political and policy responses. Public outcry following high-profile cases directly pressured policymakers, leading to increased funding and the formalization of specialized units within law enforcement. As former high-ranking law enforcement officials have noted, The development of criminal profiling was a direct response to the escalating challenge posed by serial offenders. It represented a crucial shift in our approach, moving beyond reactive investigation to proactive behavioral analysis. Beyond specialized units, serial murder cases have historically influenced legislation. Landmark legislation expanding forensic capabilities and national criminal databases, for instance, was driven in part by the need to solve cold cases linked to serial offenders. This move was a direct political response to public demand for more effective crime-fighting tools. High-profile serial killer cases often lead to intense political debates about public safety, the death penalty, and the effectiveness of law enforcement, with politicians leveraging these fears to promise tougher crime measures, reflecting how fear can be a potent political motivator. Economically, the pursuit and prosecution of serial killers impose immense burdens. Investigations can span years, involving countless man-hours, advanced forensic analysis, and interstate cooperation. Highly publicized trials, for example, incurred substantial legal costs, and the lifelong incarceration of these offenders represents an ongoing financial drain on correctional systems. Estimates for the cost of a single capital murder case, from investigation to appeals, can run into the millions of dollars, far exceeding the cost of life imprisonment. Paradoxically, the public's fascination with serial killers has spawned a lucrative true crime industry. Books, documentaries, podcasts, and streaming series about notorious killers generate significant revenue, with production budgets for true crime documentaries sometimes reaching substantial figures. This macabre capitalism raises ethical questions about profiting from tragedy. Critics, including victim advocates and ethicists, frequently argue that this industry risks secondary victimization by re-traumatizing survivors and victims' families, while simultaneously glamorizing the perpetrators and erasing the individuality of those who suffered. Furthermore, from an economic standpoint, it's also worth noting that many serial killer victims, particularly those of highly prolific offenders, often come from marginalized communities, such as sex workers, runaways, or the homeless. Their often transient lifestyles and lack of social safety nets can make them economically vulnerable and, tragically, less likely to be immediately missed or have their disappearances prioritized, impacting the speed and resources allocated to early investigations. Law enforcement techniques have profoundly reshaped. Periods of rising serial killer activity directly led to the establishment and development of specialized units within national investigative agencies, pioneering the field of criminal profiling. These units systematically developed methods to identify behavioral patterns, modus operandi, and psychological characteristics of unknown offenders. Furthermore, advancements in forensic science, particularly the widespread adoption of DNA analysis, revolutionized cold case investigations and offender identification, providing irrefutable evidence that was often impossible to obtain previously. National databases allowing law enforcement agencies to share information on violent crimes, particularly homicides, were created to identify patterns and link cases across different jurisdictions, further enhancing investigative capabilities. This collaboration, along with improved forensic technology, has arguably contributed to a decrease in the number of active serial killers in recent decades, though this remains a subject of ongoing criminological debate. Socially, these cases heighten public awareness of personal safety, often leading to increased vigilance, a re-evaluation of trust in strangers, and the implementation of community safety initiatives like neighborhood watch programs and stranger danger education for children. Moreover, the pervasive media coverage and subsequent fictionalizations of their stories, from true crime books and documentaries to Hollywood films and TV series, have embedded them deeply into popular culture. This raises ongoing ethical questions about the potential for glamorizing violence or exploiting tragedy, while simultaneously satisfying a deep-seated human curiosity about the darker, often inexplicable, aspects of the human psyche. The enduring fascination with these figures reflects a societal attempt to comprehend the incomprehensible, to find meaning in senseless violence, and perhaps, to reassure ourselves that such evil is an anomaly, rather than an inherent potential. As some profiling pioneers articulated, we don't catch them all, and since the ones we do catch have already killed or raped or tortured or bombed or burned or maimed, none of them is ever caught soon enough. This sobering reality underscores the persistent challenge. The narratives of these killers serve as cautionary tales, reminding us of the ever-present need for vigilance and the ongoing quest to understand the darkest corners of human behavior. In conclusion, the most famous serial killers are not merely statistics but enduring symbols of terror and the inexplicable capacity for profound evil within humanity. Their stories, while undeniably gruesome and disturbing, offer a chilling, albeit crucial, glimpse into the complex psychological underpinnings of extreme violence. By studying their methods, motives, and the profound societal reactions to their crimes, we gain a deeper, albeit unsettling, understanding of the human condition and the persistent challenge of confronting the darkness that can lurk beneath the surface of seemingly ordinary lives. This exploration is not about sensationalism, but about leveraging the undeniable public fascination with these cases to understand the mechanisms of violence, the evolution of criminal investigation, and the societal vulnerabilities that predators exploit. The precise factors contributing to a serial killer's fame are a morbid tapestry woven from the shocking nature of their deeds, their elusive ability to escape justice, their chilling attempts to communicate with or taunt the public, and the sensational magnifying glass of mass media. This celebrity monster phenomenon, while ethically fraught, inadvertently serves as a powerful catalyst for change. The sheer terror they inspire has driven significant advancements in forensic science, the development of sophisticated psychological profiling techniques, and the establishment of interagency cooperation. Their cases expose cracks in societal safeguards and prompt a re-evaluation of public safety measures. Ultimately, the narratives of these killers serve as a stark reminder of our collective responsibility to not only pursue justice for victims but also to invest in the scientific and sociological understanding that might one day prevent such horrors. By dissecting how these individuals achieve their macabre notoriety, we are not glorifying them, but rather arming ourselves with the knowledge to disrupt the cycle of fear and fascination. It is through this unflinching examination that we can truly work towards a future where the shadows cast by these individuals are confined to history, replaced by enhanced vigilance, empathetic support for potential victims, and more robust systems of prevention and protection. The goal is to move beyond mere fear and fascination to a proactive understanding that safeguards society against the emergence of its darkest figures.